You know, my father and my mother never married, and they were only together one time. One time. And it, for him, wasn't about a calling. It was about my mother was wearing a poodle skirt. And he said he wanted to know what was up under there. And he found out one time, and that was me up under there. And at the time that I was born, there weren't any great proclamations or even anyone who wanted me. My mother hid the pregnancy until the day her water broke. And I was considered that illegitimate child and all that that meant in 1954 in Mississippi. For a long time, I felt the shame of that, the lack of esteem around that. But around 4 or 5, I started to understand that there was a calling. I was watching my grandmother hanging clothes on a line. And we grew up in rural Mississippi, no running water, no electricity, no television. Of course, you didn't have television, you had no electricity. So I was watching my grandmother hang clothes out on a line. And it was a cool day because I could see the moisture from her breath. And I was supposed to be on the back porch churning butter. And so I would only churn when she'd look at me. I'd look at me and then I'd churn. And then she'd look at me, I'd churn some more. And she was hanging clothes on the line and she said, "Oprah Gail, you better watch me now because one day you're going to have to learn how to do this for yourself." And I tell you, I think I was between 4 and 5. I remember having this feeling inside myself while watching her that, I am not going to be hanging no clothes on a line. It's just a little feeling that came over me that said, your life will be bigger than this. There's something greater than this ahead for you. Now, I could feel that inside myself, but I was smart enough not to tell my grandmother that. The little voice said, but don't tell her. I have been led by that little voice my entire life. And if I had any real wisdom to share with you, it is let that voice lead you. Let that voice. That's the common ground that we all share. I have led and continue to lead a magnificent life. And all the things that are ever said about me and the accomplishments and the things that I've been able to do and the Oprah show #1 for 25 straight years, all of that stuff, good stuff, all the awards, all the stuff Hajir was talking about. But what nobody really knows is the sense of contentment, fulfillment, reward, rejoicing, happiness, and peace I feel. Because my entire life I have listened and been guided by that voice. That voice is your inner GPS. It is your intuition. It is your voice of God, your higher power, your higher self that everybody has, that allows you to make the right decision even when other people are wrong, that allows you to do the right thing even when nobody, and especially when nobody else is watching. I have been guided by that voice that has led me to this place at JCSU today. You can never go wrong because the truth is we live in a great time. In spite of what we see on the television and violence against young black men that they have no power and control over, in spite of the times. We have each been, as Maya Angelou used to say to me, paid for. Your crown has been paid for, and your number one job is to put it on your head and wear it. Your number one job is to know that the crown has been paid for, and you've got to know it. And how do you continue to know and pay that crown forward? Well, you can't do it unless you know yourself. Stedman wrote a book about a long time ago called You Can Make It Happen. And the first chapter in that book talks about checking your ID or knowing your identity. You can't pay the crown forward unless you know who you are, where you come from, and the sacrifice, the true sacrifice, and hope and tears and struggle that went into making you who you are, because you didn't do it alone. At no point in my rise in my career did I ever think that anything that was happening just because of me. Why? Because from the time I was 3rd grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, high school, I was reciting Sojourner Truth. I surrender all. I pray and I cry. Lord, help me surrender this thing. Let me let it go. You know how you pray and then you get up and you still carrying the burden and you can feel, oh, Lord ain't answered it yet. I prayed and I cried and I say, Lord, I want to release it so that I can not just be okay going to see The Color Purple, but I can bless Alfre Woodard when I see her in the role I wanted. Lord, help me bless Alfre Woodard. I surrender all. I surrender all. I prayed some more until you ever prayed and you can feel the hand of God come down and release it. You released it. You gave it over. You don't have to carry that burden anymore. And I tell you, the life-changing moment for me was the second I felt the release. A woman comes running out of the door and she says, is your name Oprah? Is your name Oprah Winfrey? There's a man on the phone. He says, his name is Steven Spielberg. I go running. I get to the phones. He says, I hear you're at a fat farm. I said, no. This here is a health farm. It's a health retreat. And he says, I'd like to see you in my office in California tomorrow. And if you lose a pound, you may lose this part. And I say, no problem. Because I know I don't have a problem not losing a pound. So I stop at the Dairy Queen. I get myself 3 scoops just in case. And the next day, I'm in Spielberg's office and he says, you're hired. Now, the great lesson for me in that moment was I could feel that the moment I say, I am going to make peace with this thing because I've done everything that I can do, and I'm going to hand it over to the higher power, to the Most High, to the Almighty, who can lead you to the rock that is higher than thy. Psalm 61:2, my favorite Bible verse. Write it down. You're going to need it when trouble comes. When trouble comes, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, and you will be delivered. Surrender all. I have to say that when I finished The Color Purple, Quincy Jones, who became a really dear friend of mine, said to me what I feel looking in your faces today. I look in your face and I see my face. You make me proud. And your future's so bright, JCSU, it burns my eyes. Go with God.